Welcome back, guys. In our last video, we took a look at the rest of Article 1, which is Congress. Today, we're going to take a look at Article 2, which created the executive branch, which is what you know today as the president and his cabinet. It was created, secondly, because Congress is the most important branch of government. So that's why that was created in Article 1. Article 2, the Founding Fathers knew they needed some kind of executive, someone who was going to enforce the laws of Congress, which is the actual job of the president. But they were really worried about making it too powerful. Alexander Hamilton had called for a monarchy for life for the office. And the Founding Fathers did not want anything like that. So they drafted this new position really around Washington, and hoped that his administration would set the precedent for future presidents, which it has in a lot of ways. But just like we did with Congress, we're going to take a look at the requirements to become president. There are only three, very simple. You must be 35 years old. It's the oldest requirement for any elected office at the federal level. You have to have lived in the United States for 14 years, and you must be a natural-born citizen. Now, this one is the one that really brings up a lot of debate and a lot of what-if questions. There really is no definition to what this is. The Founding Fathers didn't clarify in the Constitution or really anywhere what a natural-born citizen was. To be naturalized means to become a citizen of the United States. So it's thought that all you had to do was be a citizen. Some people believe you must be born in the United States. You must be born to American parents in another country. We don't really know the answer. And it's really what we call a non-justiciable question. It's not up to anyone to decide but Congress. They have to pass a law explaining what it is. We've really only had, that I'm aware of, two instances of presidents that don't necessarily qualify. Andrew Jackson was born in Tennessee, which wasn't a state at the time when he was born. But he was elected president. No one seemed to care at all. And the other example is in 2016, President Trump was threatening to sue Ted Cruz, who was his Republican opponent, because he was not born in the United States. He was born in Canada to one of his parents was an American citizen. So the question was, is he allowed to be president? Obviously, it didn't matter because Senator Cruz wound up dropping out. But it's a question that we still have yet to get an answer for. And it's a pretty cool topic for discussion. Originally, you could be elected to 4-year terms, as many as you wanted. There was no set limit. It was kind of thought however long Washington wanted to serve would be good enough for everybody else. He served 2 terms and then stepped down. It was really an unwritten rule from that point forward that presidents would serve no more than 2 terms. That all changed. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected to 4 terms. And in 1951, fearing really what they saw as a monarchy, Republicans passed the 22nd Amendment, which limits presidential terms to 2 full 4-year terms. And they can be non-consecutive. We've had one of those before as well. Now, how do you get elected president? Well, this is a very, very complicated process. And this is what's going to bring us to our document here. It's listed under the Files section in your Teams. But I'm going to take you through kind of the winding path of the presidency. So step 1 is you have to earn your party's nomination, right? So if I'm a Democrat, I have to defeat other Democratic candidates to win the party's nomination for president. We do that through primaries and caucuses. And those exist in every single state. They've already begun in some. Rhode Island's is May 13th. And you go and choose who you want to represent your party for the presidency. And we have 2 different versions of this. A primary is like a general voting system. You go in with a secret ballot and cast your vote for who you want to represent you from your party. A caucus, it only exists in 6 states. And instead of writing down your ballot, you actually organize in a big room based on who you support. So if there are 5 candidates for the Republican Party, then there are 5 different groups that will assemble in a gym or an auditorium or a library. And then you just count the number of people that fall into those groups. And it's a very bizarre system that really isn't used anymore because it's kind of stupid, I'll be honest. Even this year, Iowa messed up their counting from the caucus. But the way it works is, depending on how many votes you earn in each state, you get delegates. And going on to step 2 of that winding road is the National Convention. And at each convention, the party every party has one, not just the two big ones. They will add up the number of delegates that are won over the 50 states, and then whoever gets the most delegates, if you reach the magic number required, goes on to become that party's nominee. One little wrinkle there is in the Democratic National Convention, they have what are called superdelegates. And those are like extra 750 delegates that don't have to listen to what their state says. They can just do whatever they want and vote for whomever they want. So in July for the Democratic National Convention, it'll be really interesting. It's held in Milwaukee this year. What will happen between Biden and Sanders, where those superdelegates will fall. The Republican National Convention, Trump, if he hasn't already, is all but guaranteed to secure the victory against his challenger, Bill Weld, who only had one vote as of last check. Step 3 is where the people come in again, and that is what we call the general election or the popular vote. Americans go to the polls on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November and cast their vote for, generally, most people think it's for the president, but that's not true. Instead, what you're doing, as you can see in this visual, is you're casting your vote for electors, people from your state that will eventually cast a vote for who the president will be. Now, you look at this map, there's all sorts of numbers. How do we get these numbers? Every state gets 2 electoral votes for their senators, plus however many representatives they have in the House of Representatives. So if we take a look at Rhode Island has 2 senators like everybody else and 2 reps. So we have 4 electoral votes. Contrast that with California, which has 53 reps, 2 senators, they get 55 votes. Now, the way it works, if I'm running against my wife in the presidential election and I win, 500,000 votes in Rhode Island and she wins 400,000 votes in Rhode Island, I get all of Rhode Island's 4 electoral votes. Same thing if I did in California, Utah, Idaho, whatever. If I win by 1 vote or a trillion popular votes, it doesn't matter. I get all the electoral votes from that state. And that's the way it works in every single state except Maine and Nebraska. They actually split their votes. So if I win half of the votes, I get 2 votes for Maine, and my wife would get the other 2 votes for Maine. Of course, it has to be complicated just because. Now, this is great, except there's also another wrinkle in the system. We have what are called faithless or renegade electors. Rhode Island, everyone in Rhode Island could vote for myself, and I could not win a single electoral vote because not every state requires their electors to vote for the candidate that wins that state. So those electors are people that are chosen from the state. They could be, former political people. They could be celebrities. It doesn't matter as long as they're from a party. And if they don't like the candidate, they can vote for somebody else. And that happened in 2016, actually, in Maine, in particular. So it's not entirely guaranteed. But most of the time, those electors will vote for what their states tell them. There's a total of 538 votes up for grabs. As you can see down here, the magic number is 270. The article that you're going to read is called 270 to Win. And it's all about how you get to that magic number and how that's been impacted in previous elections. Now, if we go back to our PowerPoint real quick, after those electors cast their vote, and they send them into Congress, they're counted on the first Saturday in January by the vice president, who is the president of the Senate. And he reads aloud the votes, and whoever gets the most becomes the president. Originally, whoever got the second most number of votes became the vice president. And that was fine because there were no political parties, and that wasn't an issue at all. But immediately in 1796 and 1800, we see that become a problem where we have different political parties, both in the executive office. So that was changed by the 12th Amendment, which separates the vote for the 2. Now, let's say no one got to the magic number of 270. Well, we have what's called a plurality, or in one case, there was actually a tie in 1800. Then the vote goes to the House of Representatives, and every state gets 1 vote. It's only ever happened twice, and in the current 2-party system, probably not going to happen anytime soon. At least I would expect not. Why do we have this system in the first place? This seems absolutely ridiculous and convoluted. Why does it exist? Well, it's a great question. The Founding Fathers were terrified of letting the people decide. We've discussed mobocracy before. They were terrified of people making poorly informed decisions without all the information at hand because it traveled so slowly at the time. They also did not want the Congress to choose, because if Congress chose one of its own members, then that person would basically feel indebted and do whatever Congress told them. So this was a compromise. So we have what's called an indirect vote for the president. You tell electors who to vote for. Now, there are definitely reasons on both sides to keep it and to abolish it. People have been trying to change it forever, but it requires a constitutional amendment, which is explained in your article. It's really, really hard to do. It's been tried over 1,000 times on the floor of the House and the Senate, and it's gotten nowhere because it's just so difficult. If we look at it historically, the Electoral College has gotten it right most of the time, except for the 5 elections you see listed on the screen. It's reflected the will of the people. Most recently, in 2016, President Trump lost by 2.5 million votes, yet won the Electoral College. And in the homework we're going to do on the map of the 2016 election, you'll see why. He won some major, what we call swing states. In 2000, I remember this election, it came down to Florida. President Bush, who would go on to win, won Florida by 537 votes, an incredibly small margin, and there was a recount required. And the Supreme Court had to step in and declare Bush the winner. Really, really complicated legal process. But he had lost the general election by 500,000 votes. But really, other than those 5, we generally, for the most part, get it right with the Electoral College. And it really allows states to matter. A state like Rhode Island would not matter if it were just a general popular election. You would just go to the 5 cities that matter in the country and you'd win. So it really makes the idea of federalism apparent in this kind of voting. Reasons to get rid of it? Well, the most basic is it's incredibly undemocratic. You theoretically could not reflect the will of the people. And you could have a minority candidate, meaning someone who doesn't win the most votes, win the election, which is insane. You also have those faithless and renegade electors I was talking about, which make people feel that their vote doesn't matter, which is why voter turnout is so poor in the United States. And even states like Wyoming and Idaho, they get 3 electoral votes, which isn't necessarily a fair representation. People claim that they have too much of a vote and too much of a stake in determining the presidency. Over the next couple of days for homework, you're going to be doing two maps, on the 2012 and 2016 election. We'll see how those electoral groups have changed. And hopefully for 2020, you'll be able to take a look at that as well. You'll also be reading an article and explaining to your parents, hopefully, how the Electoral College works.